Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarini Jayo Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to the level 2 Bhagavad Gita classes from ISKCON Mangaluru. So yesterday we started with the second chapter, right? And then we touch based a couple of things in the second chapter. Shubhra Mataji, do you want to give a recap or say whatever you remember from yesterday's class?
Yes, Radha. Basically, we went through the second chapter, starting means in that the God has spoken, started telling about our basic nature, and like we are souls, and God is the super soul, and He has given the basic information about the soul, how the soul is and the nature of the soul,
Yeah.
like nanam chindanti shastrani nanam dahati pavaka vedanti chapam, like that. Don't remember the.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. I think you covered most of them. So this chapter started with the Arjuna's doubts, right? So and then Arjuna actually surrendered. So Arjuna, because he was bewildered, and then it was not something which he could actually find a cause for it, or so he could find the solution for this, right? So what did he do? So he just surrendered to the Lord, right? So he surrendered to the Guru. So that's what even most of us should do. In so whenever we are in confusion and then we don't see the roadmap ahead, right? So that's what he did it, and then Krishna took the charge, right? We saw that Krishna actually told him, "Say, where have these impurities come to you?" Right? And then he started, because Arjuna was more attached to the material body, right? So Krishna started the topic with that. So he said that soul and body are two different things, right? So the first lesson which Krishna gave him is, we are not the body, we are the soul. So that's the main important thing to understand the further sections, right? So with that, right, so a lot of doubts would be clarified. So his Lord Krishna has given the information to Arjuna, saying that don't get attached to what is not required, right? So it is something similar to the bird in a cage, right? So if there is a bird in a cage, right, and say if there is an owner, right, and the owner is keep on painting the cage, okay, so she is putting different colors, she is bringing gold color, silver color, she is actually magnifying the cage, but she is not feeding the parrot. So what is the purpose? Nothing, right? So the parrot is like the soul, right? And the cage is the material body. Okay. So in that way, right? So we'll have, and he gave lot many examples also, right? So and then he said that we'll have to, there'll be man upman, right? Sukha dukha, and then so we'll have to tolerate it, right? And then even he said that the soul actually migrates from one body to the other, right? The other important thing was the material body. So the material body is perishable, right? So it will actually one day die. So anything born materially has to die. And then soul is eternal. So soul only transmigrates from one body to the other, right? Just like we change our dress, right? So as we wear the new dresses, right? So similarly, the soul actually wears the new shirt or new garment, right? So it's nothing but the body. Okay. So this happens through, right? So and then as Mataji said, right? So we went into a section so wherein we were looking at the properties of the soul, right? And we did cover that the soul is very tiny, right? And it is 1 by 10,000 part of the tip of the hair. Okay. And say we saw that because of that size, right? So is- the soul cannot be cut into pieces, nor it can be moistened, nor so none of them, right? So nor any weapons can kill, so nor any fire, nor water, nor wind, nothing, right? So nothing can actually kill the soul, right? So it will only the body which gets killed because soul is eternal, right? So this was the last verse. Nainam chintanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, nachainam kledayantyapo, nashoshati maruta. So this is what we spoke. And then further, right? So so now in the next couple of verses, right? Say the Lord will actually describe the properties of the soul, saying that it's indestructible, right? And then it cannot be seen through any of the latest modern so-called technologies and all, right? So these are all the properties, right? So it is present everywhere, everlasting, neither burned nor dried, insoluble, unbreakable. So these all things are the properties of the soul. So soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Yeah. So basically, these are all the some of the characteristics of the soul. Okay. So this, so whatever was there, right? So it's been mentioned. So this is more of the extension of whatever we have just spoken through, right? So it is main thing is it is eternal, right? And then it cannot be killed, right? So, if however you think that the soul for the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament. So, he says that there is no point for lamenting for the soul because so because the soul will actually transmigrate, right? So, he says that so you need not actually get attached to it, right? Because few of the philosophers think that the body is a combination of physical elements, right? And then say they say that with the body the soul also dies in. Okay, but that's not the case. Okay, so even if that's the case, right? Again, so he says that there is no lamentation for the loss of chemicals, right? So as per the philosophers, right, if our body is a lump of chemicals and then if the body is killed, right? So then there is no point in actually lamenting for the loss of chemicals, right? Yeah. And then we'll see the next verse. Yeah. So this is a famous sloka, right? Which most of us know, right? So in some way or the other, right? We have heard this, right? Isn't it? So जातस्य हि ध्रुवं मृत्युर् ध्रुवं जन्म मृत्युश्च च तस्मादपरिहार्यते न त्वं शोचितुम् अर्हसि, right? So one who has taken birth, right? So is sure to die. Okay. So Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu. So whoever has taken a birth, so he will die. Right. And again, he is sure to take birth again. Right. So for that, you need not lament for this body. Right. So this is the cycle of birth which does which does not stop. It goes on. Right. So and the other thing is in the war, right? So violence is inevitable. Okay. So because the place where Arjuna is there, right? So there is no looking back for him because first thing is he's a Kshatriya, and the other thing is he's actually fighting against the adharma, right? So in those cases, right, in the war field, we cannot say that I'll start doing the peace talks or I'll say I'll be non-violent and all those things will not work there, right? Because everyone is ready, everyone is equipped, right? And and even the Lord will actually tell him, saying that what is his next duty, right? Because this is the duty of Kshatriya, right? And he will say that you'll have to fight, yeah. So all created beings are unmanifested in their beginning, manifest in their interior state, and unmanifested again when annihilated. So what is there for lamentation, right? So everyone. So this body is created, right, and then it actually stays for some time, and then it goes back, right? So why do we want to actually lament for it, right? So all these are temporary things, right? So like if we have a big building, right? So someone actually builds it, right? So it's not there, right? So only we had the ground or the earth was there. On top of it, he has built the building. And after say 50, 60 years, right, the building will collapse, right? So again, it will go into the earth. So he's saying that you need not actually lament for this, right? So he says that basically um, Lord Krishna is actually um, pushing Arjuna to think that so the soul is different from the matter, and then how soul transmigrates, and then he should not lament for what which is unworthy, right? And then he is actually creating the stage now, okay, Krishna, and then he'll slowly take into karma yoga, okay. So but for that, right, he's actually saying these things all, and then so we know that the soul is same even for the bigger size elephant to the smaller size ant, right? It's all the same. Yeah. So atheists do not believe in the existence, and then they believe in the who believe in the soul, right? Devotees believe in the soul. So there are two kinds of people, is what has been mentioned. Okay. So this is what I was telling, right? So if you look in it, this banyan tree also has got an soul. The elephant has also got the same, and then the ants or the flies have also got the same size of the soul, and the humans have also got the same soul. So all these things are amazing, right? So everything, everyone feels that everyone hears about this, but these things, right? So we'll only have to understand by listening. Okay, so there is no other way. So about the soul and all, right? So we'll not get any theory and all those things anywhere, right? So these things are there, and then these things have to be heard through Shabda Praman. Yeah. So the next verse says, Dehi nityam avadyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam sochutam arhasi. Okay. So he says that, O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. So here I'll just give you an small example of a cashier in a bank. Okay. So we all, okay, at least in the olden days, right? So now nobody is going to a bank, right? It's all either an UPI or they do an internet transaction, right? But in the earlier days, right? So there used to be a cashier, okay, and then he used to count, and then he used to give a lot of cash, right? So maybe in a day he might be dealing with some lakhs of rupees, right? So does he get attached to that money? So does he say that this money belongs to me? No, right? So it is for the bank, right? So it is the bank's property. Yeah. And then he is only there for sometimes wherein he is actually doing the transactions, right? So either he is debiting or he is crediting the money, right? So his job is he, and then he cannot go and then tell that all this money belongs to me, right? So he can't do that. Yeah. So similarly, we should not get attached to the material body, right? So this is a temporary body, so which has been given, and then we should use actually for cultivating spirituality, and then say use it properly, right? And then foresee that we go back to Godhead, right? So even if you look in right here, the example of the judge has been given, right? So the judge says, see, the judge gives a punishment, right? So the judge doesn't think of the two parties. So whether it is, say, one side there is one party, say, who is a cheater, on the other side who is a victim, right? So he doesn't look differently to them, right? So if the cheater is accused, then he asks him to pay some money or some settlement he does in, right? So he's not attached to either of them, right? He's just doing the duty. Similarly, Arjuna, who is there in the battlefield, right? His job is to fight as a Kshatriya and then leave everything to the God, because God Himself is saying him to fight. Yeah? So now these all things are there. So this is all about the soul which we spoke at the length. So now slowly Jnana he has given of the body and soul. Now Krishna will say that will take Arjuna into karma kanda, right? So which is nothing but puritive activities, right? So now he'll slowly say that fight for gains come from dutifully, fighting and losses come from not fighting. Okay, so he says that if you look in every place, right, Krishna always says that fight. Okay, so there is nothing to be non-violent in this battlefield. Okay, so he says that this is your swadharma. So now so until now he has set the stage, right? So where he made understand that okay, so if you kill the opponent, also they are going to get the new body, because he was more attached to Drona and Bhishma, right? So what will happen to their body? So he says that only you are going to kill the body. You're shooting the arrows to the body and not to the soul. So the soul remains the same, and then they'll be getting a new birth, right? And then now, after all these discussions, after giving the uh, details about the properties of the soul, now he's saying that do your swadharma, right? Swadharma is the specific duty, right? So whosoever it is, right? So like could be the Brahmana or could be the Kshatriya, right? So Kshatriya's duty is to fight and protect, right? So if there are any, say, if there is any invasion or if there are enemies who are attacking, right? So the purpose of the king is to fight, right? So that is what his main purpose is. And then he should not be a rubber stamp, right? So if you look, right, so most of the um, leaders in these days, right, so they are like a rubber stamp because they are actually working for the power, right? So they want to retain their seat, and then for that they'll have to compromise so many things, right? But that was not the case by then, right? So s- the king himself used to be on the battlefield and then he used to protect others. Yeah. So he says that you follow your swadharma. So in the varna ashrama we have got varna and ashrama, right? So brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya and sudra. So everyone has got his own work to do, right? So, and then this varnashrama are not based on the caste. Okay. So even that also will try to learn. So that will come in the fourth chapter, where Krishna will say that there is varnashrama dharma, but it is based on the quality. Okay, so it's on the nature of an individual, right? So it is not by the caste system. Okay. So it is like, so who is efficient in what? Okay, so in the past, right? So what used to happen is when the children are very small, right? The parents used to send them into the guru's house. Okay, and then the guru, after training, right? So after training for a couple of years, he'll decide so whether he's fit to be a kshatriya or a brahmana or a vaishya or a sudra, right? And then what does a kshatriya do? Kshatriya does the administrative job, right? Anyhow, we'll touch base these things. And then Brahmana is an advisor to the king, right? And then he actually teaches, right? And then what does an Vaishya do? So Vaishyas are actually meant for doing business, right? And then so whatever business they do, right? So they give a share to the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, yeah. And then the fourth are Shudras. Shudras are the ones who help all these three to achieve their goal. So that's the way it's been there. So he says that you'll have to actually fight. Yeah, you should, considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. Yeah. So, and then he says that even if you fight, right? So, what is going to happen, right? So, even either, so if there is a battlefield which you are actually fighting in, right? So, what will happen? So, either you win or you lose, right? So, it is being said that if a Kshatriya actually wins, he gets the kingdom to rule. Okay. And then if not, if he actually dies in the battlefield, right? So he'll go to the heaven. Okay. So he says that there is no thing to lament actually. Lord Krishna says, don't lament, right? There's an opportunity, and then he says that fight and win the battle. Yeah? If you win the battle, you get the kingdom. If you're not winning, then also you'll go to the heaven, right? So, and he says that if you don't perform your religious duties, right? Krishna says that if you do not perform the religious duty and then if you run away from this battlefield, right, you will be called as a coward. Okay. Then you'll certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. Okay. So because yesterday we were actually touch basing few things, right? So wherein we saw that um, Arjuna actually during his vanaprastha, or so during the exile, sorry, not vanaprastha, but during the exile, right? He actually collected lot of say arms, and then the weapons also, right? Because Vyasadeva said that if any fight happens with Kauravas, right, so you'll all have to have good weapons. So he actually asked Yudhishthir Maharaj to send Arjuna to Himalayas to procure those things because he said that you'll need celestial weapons to win the war. So he has to actually deal with the devatas and get their celestial weapons. Yeah. So he went to the Himalayas for doing tapasya. Yeah. And then here Prabhupada says that Arjuna was a famous fighter and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received a reward, a weapon called Pashupatastra. That is how he received, right? Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him the special weapon. Okay, because he was the favorite student of Drona. Right? We all know the story of the bird's eye, right? So he could actually pierce the bird's eye, but others couldn't, right? By which he could kill even his teacher. So Dronacharya also gave him the special weapon. So he was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, right? Including his adoptive father, Indra. Yeah. So even Indra gave him so many celestial weapons. But if he abandoned the battle, not only would he neglect his specific duties as a Kshatriya, but he will lose all his fame and good name. Thus, prepare his royal road to hell. So that is what Prabhupada says, that if you are not doing your own swadharma, right? So we are going to prepare the royal road to hell. Yeah? In other words, he will go to hell not fighting, but by withdrawing from the battle. So this is what it will happen. Yeah? So now Lord Krishna says, people will always speak of your infamy, and for a irrespectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So this is uh, for the Kshatriyas. Okay. So Kshatriyas, if you dishonor them, right, so they can't tolerate, right? So it is better to die, right? For a respectable man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So you should not flee for fear of your life, but better die in the battlefield. This is what the Lord says. So Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Don't think that the great generals like Duryodhana, Karna, and other contemporaries will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion. So he says that if you leave this, nobody is going to actually show mercy or compassion as you have shown to them, right? They'll think that you have left this battlefield out of fear, right? So which is not good. Yeah? Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? So he's saying. So now actually he is actually pushing. Okay. Lord Krishna is actually pushing Arjuna. So he's actually showcasing Arjuna's strength, right? So what happens in any of the cases, right? In many of the in our day-to-day activities also, right? So we'll have to push people to do the best out of them, right? So if somebody is actually morose, or somebody is going through a bad phase of life, right? So what do we do? So we go and solace them and then tell them, right? Tell them that you have done so many good things, so you have so much strength, and then so you can come up, right? So this is only testing times, and then we tell so many things, right? So in that way, Krishna is actually reminding Arjuna that you went and then you have got all these credits, right? So you have been you went to Indraloka, you got the celestial weapons, you got from Shiva, you have got Pashupatra Astras, right? And then he's actually boosting, he's making him ready to fight. Yeah, and then he says that if you don't fight, so it is ill, right? That's what I just covered, right? So he says that even so, this is karma kanda, right? So uh, if you actually win, you'll get the heaven, you'll get the earthly kingdom, right? If not, then you'll go to the heavenly planet. So both are good, right? So what is there to lament? He's saying, right? So in either cases, it's a win-win situation for you. Only thing is, if you don't fight, then it's a lose. You're losing. But if you fight, you're going to get the fame in both the places. He says, fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness, distress, loss, or gain, victory, or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sins. So he says that you fight. So he says that to Arjuna that you should actually fight, and then you should not think of, say, the what will happen, right? So what will happen before and after, and all those things, right? So you live all those things, right? So he says that you need not think of those things, and then now he says that you fight and then live. You don't get attached to the fruits. So that's what he's coming to the next level, right? See, that is nothing but buddhi yoga. So now you see how slowly Krishna is actually raising the bars one after the other, right? And now he says that so don't get attached to the results. Okay. So you just do your duty and then leave it rest to the Lord. Okay. The same thing, right? Say like if we are attached to anything in the material world, right? So then we'll be actually getting agitated, and then we'll have so much of anxiety for the results, right? So for example, if you are attached to something, right, and then um, if you're looking for a result, right, so there will be a lot of anxiety. So a simple example is take the an example of writing an exam, right? So we prepare very well for the exam day and night, and then so we actually look for the results, right? So if somebody has done his duty very well, right? So in the exam, right? So if a student has read daily, right? For him, right, he'll go and write the exam, and then he'll not be much fearful because he knows that he has done his paper well, and then he'll get good marks, right? But if at all we have not done properly our work, right, and then we'll be always in anxiety, right? So if we have read only 2 days before, right, even if going to the exam itself will become a trouble, right? So we'll be in anxiety saying that whatever I have read, whether it will come or not, right? So all those things will come. So the best thing is do whatever your duty is, and then let's live. So we should not actually get attached to the fruits of the work which we are doing in. So that is the next thing which the Lord actually talks through, right? And then he'll take through so many things now. So thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytics, so Sankhya. Now listen, I'll explain in terms of working without furtive activities. He says, now Krishna will actually teach Arjuna Buddhi Yoga, right? So he says that you fight and then don't actually look for the results. Okay. So here the first sloka he says that Neha Vikramanashosti Pratyavayo na vidyate Swalpamapyasya dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So what does this sloka says is Swalpamapasya, right? So if you do a small endeavor in the spiritual life, right? So that is being counted, right? So it is not like the material life, okay? So wherein, so in the material life, right? So if you are actually if you are actually doing a degree, right? And then it happens that you don't write the last semester. So will we get a certificate? No, right? Even leave about a semester. Even if you don't pass in one of the paper, one of the subject, right? So you'll not get the degree. You'll not be awarded the degree. But in spiritual life, it's not like that. So in spiritual life, if you have only done two steps in this life, right? So you have only put two steps ahead, right? In the next life, you'll begin from the third step. Okay. So another easy example is, say in this life, say you are an engineer or a doctor or a PhD, whatever it is, right? And then, so you have taken the next life as a human. So can we actually say that, no, no, in the last Janma, I was a doctor and then give me a job? We'll again have to go to the school, learn ABCD, right? So it starts from there. So that is material life. But spiritual life is not like that. So the place where we live in, right? It starts from there. Okay. And then here I'll give you one small example, or as I'll actually take up the story of a Brahmana boy. Okay, so this is from Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, from scriptures. So he was a very pious boy. Okay, so he was very young, and then he was performing all the ritualistic activities, so which a Brahmana boy should do, right? So he was very kind to his parents, teachers. He was studying the Shastras and all. So one day, what happened is his father in the morning told him to bring some flowers from the forest. Okay. So what happened is, this boy goes into the forest for plucking flowers. Okay, for the puja, right? And then there he actually sees a dirty scene, so wherein there are a Shudra is actually doing some illicit thing. So wherein, say there a man and woman are embracing and kissing. So he sees that scene, and then his mind gets changed from there. So he actually gets more involved into that scene, and then he actually that ka, that bija gets into him. Suppose that what will happen is he gets the unwanted desire. So to fulfill that desire, right, he'll actually drag his family members. He's a married person, so he'll actually kick his wife, and then he'll actually drive away his parents, and then say he'll actually marry, or say he'll have marry that he'll bring the prostitute into his house, and then he'll get 10 childrens. Okay. And at the age of 80, right, to satisfy that a lady, right, so he'll do all wrong activities, he'll steal, he'll rob everything. But what happens is, for the 10th child, he actually gives the name as Narayana. Okay. And then what happens is, and then he's little bit attached, because what happens is, uh, so the younger ones are a little bit attached to the parents, right? So, and then at that age, right, because the younger ones don't know, so what uh, his father has done in all through his life and all, right? So he was actually calling him Narayana, give me this, like that, because he was very old at that time. And then the Yamapash will come in, right? So and then they were about to take him away to Yamaloka, right? So then what happens is, by the time they come in, right, he calls Narayana for his by looking them, and then he was calling his son, but the Lord hears him, and then he sends Vishnu Dutas, and then say here the Yamraj will not be able to take them, Yam Pashas will not be able to take them, and say he'll be given a second chance, wherein he'll utilize fully, right? So he'll repent, and then next 10-15 years he'll go to Haridwar, and then say he'll actually revive his consciousness, and then he'll go back to Godhead. So this is the story of Ajamil. Okay. So he was given a second chance. So whatever he did it, right? So again he could actually start it. So Lord was merciful that he gave him in this Janma, right? But similarly, the same thing happened to Bharat Maharaj also. Yesterday we just covered it, right? So because he was attached to a deer, he became a deer in his next life. But God gave him the special mercy wherein he could remember his past life, and then he was always getting associated with the saintly people. He was not going and then grazing lush green grass and all. So he was always roaming around the hermitages so that he can actually associate with the sages. And then he was Jada Bharata, and then we knew how he actually was so pious, and then he was equipoised, and then he was never speaking because he know his goal. So even in that life, the Lord gave him the mercy. So you see that whatever bhakti is being done, right, it is being carried away, right? So from one birth to the other. Okay. So yeah, even in this case, the example of this one is also been given. This is Garuda. So Garuda's example we'll take for the next sloka. Okay. So व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिर एक ही कुरु नंदन बहुशाखा ही अनंत्यश्च बुद्धयो व्यवसायim nam. So here those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. Their intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. So in this case, if we can take the example of Jatayu, right? So Jatayu actually helped Ram, right? So because when Ravana was actually taking away Lord Sita, right? So Jatayu actually fought, right? Right? So in that way, so if we see, right, his only purpose was that he is a pure devotee of the Lord, right? And then he is fixed in his mind. So though he was old, so he never said that I'll not go and fight with Ravana, right? So he went and fight because he was very dear to Rama, right? And then he got his two wings chopped off, but still he had the single pointed focus, right? And then the next couple of verses, the Lord says about the Vedas, okay? So men of small knowledge are very much attracted to the flowery words of Vedas. So what is the problem here is, so mostly Vedas is very huge, okay, and then so due to this day and age, right? So people are more attracted to the quick results, okay. So they only look for a portion of it. So wherein there are couple of things like so if you actually pray to this God, you'll get this benefit, right? So like if you pray to sun god, you'll get good health. If you pray to goddess Lakshmi, then you'll get good wealth. So they're attached to these things, and then they start doing those activities, but they actually forget the bigger picture, or they don't know actually because nobody tells them. So all these things are just like the chocolates, right? Or so we say the carrots, right? So for example, mostly for the small children, if you see, right, the mother says that if you do this particular piece of work, right, then I'll give you a toffee or a chocolate, right? So she gives the chocolate only for the first time or second time, right? So, but she'll never give it all the time because she knows that it is bad, right? So, here the same thing is in the Vedas. So, Vedas actually tell are actually giving these things, right? So, like the small shortcuts only to attain the bigger goal. Okay, so the bigger goal is to actually worship the Lord and go back to Godhead, right? And not to do these things. One second. Sorry. Um, so the next shloka says Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya uparita chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadhavna vidyate. So who are very attached to bhoga and aishwarya, right? So for them, say cultivating devotional service is very difficult. Yeah. The minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material attachment, opulences, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to Supreme Lord does not take place. So he says, na vidyate, right? So it will not happen. So whosoever is very much attached to the material enjoyment and sense enjoyment, right? So for them, the devotional creeper will not grow, right? So, and then the next sloka says, the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes, be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So he says that you'll have to come up from the three modes of material nature. So, because all three modes of material natures have material attachment, he says that you'll have to come up so that you have only bhakti, right? So where you get into a samadhi and then your focus is on what it is actually dovetailed with the focus of the Lord. Yeah. So Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna Nirdvando Nitva Sattvastho Niryoga Shema Atmavan. So he says that you'll have to come out of all these things, right? And then here the example, so the dovetailing our focus with the Lord's focus, right? So the whole purpose of this battle was that the miscreants have to be annihilated, right? And then so Arjuna actually has to dovetail with Lord Krishna, so arrangement, and then he should actually fight in, right? So and then with for that he has given so many example, and then he says about Vedas, and then now we heard about the Vedas, right? So wherein he says that Vedas are flowery stuff, and then you should not actually get attached to them. Rather, you should actually think higher, right? And then now he says that if in a village, right, there is a flowing river, right? So which actually suffices for all the purposes, right? So in one place you can actually bath, one place you can actually drink, right? And the other places you can actually wash your clothes, right? And then so what is the use of having multiple wells, right? So all purposes of small wells can be actually served by a big river which is flowing, right? So that is what the Lord says. The Lord says that the big river is nothing but Lord Krishna, right? So wherein so you can actually get all your material benefits, right? So whatever you're looking in, right? So if you actually dovetail with him, right? So if you get connected with Lord Krishna, right? In this case, so all your necessities will get fulfilled, right? So the all purposes of the small wells will be actually, so you'll get the benefit with the river itself, right? So all the necessities will be fulfilled with the big river. So, and then he's saying that there is no use of going into those many branches of the Vedas. Like he says that you should know that the Lord is the supreme personality of Godhead, and then he says that go to the root of the tree. Okay, who is the origin of all these creations, and then follow him, right? And then when we water to a plant, right, we only water the plant to the root, right, so that the flowers or the fruits or the leaves get nourished, right? So similarly, if in the so now Arjuna says that, say, you'll have to do bhakti yoga. Okay, so you have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. So that is what he says, right? So this is Nishkam Karma Yoga. It's wherein he says that you should actually fight, and then you're not entitled for the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to do, never be attached to not doing your duty. Okay, so he says that so it is not advised that you actually look for the fruits, nor you get attached to the fruits. Okay, so that's what. So all these things happens. Why? Because one thing is we think about ourselves, right? So when we keep ourselves at the center, right? So then we actually are looking for the fruits of the result, right? So and but the actual yoga is to actually connect with the Lord, and then be a servant of the Lord, and then follow the instructions of the Lord, right? And then he says that there are actually three kinds of works are defined in this. Okay, the prescribed ones, which are the as per the shastras, right? So one has to do that, right? And then the actions which are not sanctioned, right? Those are called capricious, and inaction, not performing one's prescribed duty. So that is even worse, right? So if you have any attachment, either good or bad, right? So then that will cause attachment, right? And then if you're not doing any inaction, so if you're not fighting also, it is sinful, right? That's the reason the only thing which is available here is to actually do the prescribed duty as per the Shastra, right? And then in the next sloka, perform your duty equipoised, abandoning all attachments to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga, right? So now the Lord actually comes saying that what is the real yoga, right? So you need not actually look for the gain or victory. So gain or victory is whose problem? That is the Lord's problem. So He'll actually look into it. So your job is to go and act whatever is been given to you, right? So you will have to attach from the material stuff, and then we'll have to get detached from the material stuff and then get attached to the spiritual thing. Yeah. So keep all abominable activities far distance from devotional service. So he says that so, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. So he says that if at all we want to enjoy the fruits right by ourselves, then we are misers. So misers in the sense not in the form of wealth, right? She might be a wealthy person, so right, but if you are not using that wealth for the right purpose, right, then so you are miser spiritually. So it's not the miserness of the wealth, and then he says that you'll have to be distant from the abominable activities. Okay, so the next thing he says that a man engaged in devotional service rides himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all yoga. So he says that Buddhi yoga is the best. Okay, so he says that strive for that, right? So, and he says that there is no reactions for it, right? So you'll not get any reactions because you're working for the right thing, right? So he need not even renounce whatever he was thinking, right? So he need not renounce. And then he's saying that you need to remove your ignorance, right? So how do you remove your ignorance? By surrendering to Lord Krishna in all aspects and then follow his instructions of whatever he says, right? Yeah, but by thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries. Okay, so if we engage in devotional service, and this is what the others have done in, right? So from the spiritual world, right? So we can go from the material world, we can go to the spiritual world, which is our destination. Yeah, that's the place wherein so we all have come, right? So if we take the shelter, right? If we take the shelter of the Lord, right? So in actually in Srimad Bhagavatam, it has been said that the whole material ocean will actually become like a small calf hoof print, right? So when a calf walks in a mud, right? So there is a small hoof print which gets printed, right? So the whole material ocean will become that small. Okay, so Lord will deliver us. Yeah. So we all know, right? So because material world there is danger at every step, right? So that's the reason. So we'll have to utilize this particular lifetime, right? And then follow what the other sages and the Mahajans have done in, right? So follow their footsteps and then we'll have to move ahead. Yeah. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all this been heard, that all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. He says that when you have passed all these things, then so your delusion will go away, right? So you'll get the right knowledge. So this is what slowly the Lord is taking to the next stage, so wherein he'll talk about samadhi, right? So how uh, the pure devotional service arises, right? So what happens when we are in trance, right? So when our mind is totally fixed on the Lord. Yeah. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas and when it remains fixed in this trance of self realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So he says that that is the place so wherein you will get the divine samadhi, right? So divine consciousness. So that's the very advanced stage. Yeah. So that's the realization which will actually talk about. So now there will be a lot of questions where Arjuna will ask. So you have you have spoken about this thing, right? So he'll ask, how does he look, and then he'll actually put set of questions which actually will pick it in the next session. So we'll end today's session here because this is second chapter. It has got 72 verses. We cannot complete in 2 classes. We'll have to take one more to complete the second chapter. Hare Krishna, Matajis, any doubts you have from today's class? So we'll spend 1 or 2 minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Mataji, Hare Krishna.
So, in this chapter, basically, Lord Krishna is telling about Nishkam Karm.
Hmm.
What I understood that we should not attach ourselves to the fruits of the karma.
Yes, yes, Mataji.
So, and devotional service by is Nishkam Karm called devotional service, or devotional service will lead us to Nishkam Karma?
No, these are all stages, Mataji. So the first thing was Karma Kanda, right? So then Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? So and then Sakama Karma Yoga is also there. So wherein say you'll do it, you'll not do it as a say obligation or something, right? So that is something which will come naturally. So that is the final stage, which is the devotional service, right? So for example, most of the time when we go to the temple, right? So we go to the temple for some reason, right? So maybe tomorrow is my exam or something is not working well, or I don't have peace of mind, and then I go and then I pray to the Lord for giving me those things, right? But after some time, right? So if you're continuously doing devotional service, right? So you'll not expect anything from the Lord. Okay, so you'll not go to the Lord to give some benedictions, or you'll not go anything. You'll not go with any of the material desires or anything to fulfill. Rather, so you will be actually doing dedicating your time to make the Lord happy. Okay. So that is the devotional service, Mataji. So that is the actual devotion which comes from the inner heart, so wherein you don't have any um, say desires. Say like, for example, the relationship between a mother and a baby, right? So you see the relationship, right? So they both, even though the baby is not able to talk, right? So you see the dependency which they have. So that's the devotional service. They're totally dependent on their mother. They don't know what will happen in winter, what will happen in summer. So when winter comes in, right? So the mother actually brings woolen clothes and then wears the baby, right? Similarly, when we do pure devotional service, then there is a bond which actually happens between the Lord and us, and the Lord also reciprocates to us. Okay, so that's all advanced stages, Mataji. So wherein we take care of the Lord, and then the Lord also will take care of us. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for your association. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namo. Hare Krishna.